This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. This episode is brought to you by BNC Pro, the brand spanking new digital wealth platform featuring an all-in-one suite of customizable institutional-grade applications that help you manage your crypto investments. Yes, research, chart, screen, analyze, optimize, report, and more. BNC Pro is the ultimate portfolio tool for individual or enterprise use. Streamline your workflow, manage your crypto, and master this brave new asset class your way with BNC Pro. Go to bnc-pro.com now to create your free account, or just look for the link in the show notes to this episode. Now, on with the show. My guest today is Jeff McDonald. Jeff is the co-founder of the NEM Foundation. NEM have implemented some big changes to their company structures, and they are preparing for the launch of Symbol, the next generation of the NEM blockchain. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here, Jeff. Now, before we get started, what I've been doing lately is just checking in with people, various guests on the podcast, checking in on your location, where you are in the world, and what it is like on the ground where you are in terms of the current global pandemic. Where are you?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm in Oklahoma in United States, and I guess we are in somewhat of a lockdown, although I'm allowed to leave my house and drive around and go to the store and run errands. So we're doing mostly fine here. The coronavirus is obviously a real deal, but it hasn't affected me personally.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. So you have quite an interesting background, Jeff. So as I understand it, you were a Peace Corps volunteer probably some time ago, but you spent time in Africa helping out with HIV education. Then you spent a long time in Korea doing some teaching. Does all this seem like a former life to you now?
Yeah, exactly. So I've definitely done those things, and they really define who I am. But that definitely describes who I was pre-blockchain, and now we're in post-blockchain era. And my life has been turned upside down because of blockchain. But it's good. I love it all. Happy to have done it.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about blockchain then. So what was your first intersection with Bitcoin or with blockchain? When did this happen for you? When did you start to go down the rabbit hole?
The really big going down the rabbit hole, as we say, happened in late 2013. Bitcoin had gained a lot of fame for a giant pump and price spike, and that had got me interested. I FOMO'd and bought in, and as it crashed, I continued to buy in as it went all the way down. But it started me down this journey. I joined this website called Bitcoin Talk, spent a lot of time, and then, became a big fan of Bitcoin. And then my mind was kind of opened up to just all the possibilities that blockchain, not just for money, but for anything. And that's when I started exploring altcoins. And then in January of 2014, that's actually when NEM was announced on the Bitcoin Talk forum. And it was a small community, and I thought, hey, let me see what I can do to help out. That led me to make a Facebook page for the community. I wasn't a developer. The Facebook page needed content, so I started writing tutorials so we could have posts. Since I had written so many tutorials, I became very knowledgeable about the blockchain, and then started helping them make marketing materials. Then, because I made marketing materials, I started going to meetups and handing out those marketing materials. And somewhere along the way, I kind of became a community spokesperson. And then by 2015, more than a year after I started with the Facebook page, we launched. And by that time, I was a NEM core team member.
It sounds like you must have been one of the early few, or one of the first to really join the NEM community.
Yeah, I mean, it was those days were a lot different then. So, like I said, we started off as not even having a website or a forum, but as a thread on another person's website, Bitcoin Talk, and which had literally thousands of threads. And I remember at one point, we decided to switch over to Telegram because the app had just come out, and we had a hard time getting 30 people to join Telegram. And at that point in a time, Telegram could only have a maximum of 100 people in a room. And I remember hustling as much as we could to get 100 people into our Telegram room. And right almost when we got to 100, they raised the limit to 300. So wow. we never maxed out, but it was definitely different times. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very different from today's crypto world, where you have these overwhelming Telegram groups with thousands of people and dubious scams and all that sort of carry on. What was it about NEM in particular that really caught your interest and captured your imagination at that early stage then, Jeff?
My mind had been really expanded by the idea of trustlessness. And Bitcoin had entered into the quasi-mainstream / niche community about showing off how we could have trustless money. And then I thought, well, if its main feature is trustlessness and it's applying that to money, what else could it be applied to? And there was another project at the time called NXT, or some people call it Next. And they had done a lot of experiments with adding different features. And it was, in some ways, it was way ahead of its time on its ability to have different features. And I just really thought, let's explore the idea of using blockchain for more than just money. Identity, voting, certificates, time stamping, supply chain. All of these things were kind of going through my mind, putting a whole government on the blockchain at the time. And so when NEM was being born and I realized that the architecture could start to meet some of these needs, that's when I really dove in.
And so this is 6 years ago now, really, Jeff, and look, 6 years in blockchain is an incredibly long time. So I can imagine that you have experienced some incredible highs and probably some devastating lows across those years. Can you share any key moments that stick out along the way? Has your faith ever been tested?
No, I mean, I've been a believer since day one. I kind of went down the rabbit hole like we talked about earlier, and I'm still digging that rabbit hole. I just went full speed and quit my job and started as a co-founder of a foundation in another company, and I haven't stopped. But there's I would say there's two ways that I think about the highs and the lows, and that's the personal versus the community. And the biggest kind of high is watching the community grow, watching the ecosystem grow, watching the adoption grow of all blockchains, but in particular, of course, NEM. And then personally, I was the inventor of a standard on NEM called the apostille standard. And that's for notarization and making NFTs, or non-fungible assets. At the time, this is years before Ethereum had the 720 standard. And so that was really nice. A developer in France named Jimmy helped build that. And then later on, I was the inventor of another standard, the voting standard on NEM, which has been used a lot for different elections in the community. And I worked with a developer in Spain named Sergi, and he built that. So those are some of my kind of highlights that I've had personally. But as far as the community goes, being a core team member, watching the foundation grow, watching NEM gain awareness all over the world, that's been some of the big highlights.
With NEM, though, NEM is undertaking a pivot or a rebrand, or whatever you want to call it. So you're transitioning to Symbol, and so that's coming with, as I say, a rebrand and really a rebuilding of the NEM protocol. I suppose in tandem with this, we've seen NEM go from really being, a top 5 crypto asset, and then slipping down the market cap table, just in terms of market capitalization. But I guess that just kind of puts us in context. NEM is undertaking something of a rebuilding phase, really. Is that how you would characterize things?
Yeah, definitely. We're in a rebuilding process, and Catapult is being built from the ground up. And then Catapult is kind of the code name, and now the official blockchain is called Symbol. And I guess I could give one example which kind of highlights how things were towards how they are now with the growth of Catapult to Symbol. And that was in early 2016. I was in a Telegram chat with the core developers, and they said, does anybody have any good names for a project that starts with a C? And we were kind of throwing around different names, and I said, Catapult, because catapults are cool. Who doesn't like a catapult? And the developers kind of said, okay, that sounds like a good name. And then it was later on that I found out what that conversation was about, that it was the code name for this kind of new blockchain. And that's before there was a giant 2017 pump. Remember, that was early 2016 when communities were very small. But by 2020, we had seen blockchain become a mainstream thing to some extent, where they even talk about it on the news and TV shows, and dramas mention it now, whereas before it was laughable. And so when we came to Symbol, we actually hired a marketing agency, a professional marketing agency based out of the UK. And we spent months doing market research, analyzing different blockchains, thinking about different names, starting off with a list of more than 100 and whittling that down. And so there's a lot of time and effort put into it. And to me, that kind of summarizes the whole NEM 1 versus Symbol difference. Whereas, NEM was a small group of people that were having a hobbyist endeavor and made a really good go at it and made a pretty amazing blockchain, NEM version 1. But Symbol has been much more of a well thought out endeavor. And I think that when we finally launch the product, that's going to show.
Yes, well, I can imagine that would be the case, because if NEM version 1 was what you would call a first generation blockchain, and it was one of the early blockchains, and then since that time, obviously in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen, really an explosion in, different chains all around the world, all with their own unique set of features and trade-offs. So, well, let's just dig into Catapult then a little bit, Jeff. So yeah, I mean, I'd love you to outline what you see as the vision for Catapult as a blockchain, what the key use cases are, the target customers, that kind of thing.
Well, I think that the kind of key vision behind Catapult and Symbol is to make a blockchain that works, and that works really well. And NEM did that. NEM set out to always work and has never failed. We've never lost an asset, not once. There's never been a coin that was lost. We've never had a multi-sig contract that's broken. We've never had a name domain contract mess up or anything. Like, it's always worked on NEM. And the kind of idea behind Symbol is to do the same, but do it even better. Add more functions, add more scalability, add even more security, and make sure that it works. And, this is a really key thing that I think a lot of people miss, is that blockchains shouldn't work 99.9% of the time or 99.999% of the time. They have to work 100% of the time, Because when people put $1 million or $1 billion on the blockchain, and we have some kind of, DeFi contract, and it gets hacked, people lose their money. So I'm really proud of NEM's, basically perfect history, and looking forward to seeing that continue on with Symbol. And I think that it's especially important with use cases, right? There's a lot of enterprises and governments that are looking at blockchains, but they don't want their blockchain application to work 99% of the time. They want it to work 100% of the time, right? Because it's one thing to have a community project where somebody plays around with your code and they brick your contract. It's a whole nother thing for a government to get bricked because they used the wrong blockchain. So, we're looking at Symbol for anybody that needs really complicated cross-border transactions. We're looking at people that really need to make sure that when they audit something, the audit logs are 100% valid, that they can never be corrupted. We're looking at, things that might need regulation or have transactions investigated. So anything that deals with a large amount of money, where you need a perfectly clear audit record and are 100% sure that it's not going to get hacked, could be a potential use case for the Symbol blockchain.
Who would you see as your closest competitors in terms of, what are the other blockchains that you look at, and which ones make you a little bit nervous at how far they're edging out or not?
Well, I would say that we have 3 competitors, and again, this is just my opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of the foundation.
Of course.
On this one, this is just Jeff's opinion, not our official viewpoint. But I would say personally, I see our competitor as Hyperledger for the private chains. Hyperledger and supply chain. Hyperledger's done a really good job of capturing enterprise supply chain on the blockchain or digital ledger technology. And, NEM does that very good too, but we don't have the name IBM to stand behind it. So it's been a little bit hard competing with them. Of course, for smart contracts, making your own token, Ethereum is the, industry leader, and it's done a great job of really helping to broaden people's minds that blockchain can be more than just a coin, which I'm super happy about. And then lastly, the kind of 800-pound gorilla, which we're still not sure about, but it seems like it's going to happen, but not going to happen, would of course be Libra, which if it does launch, and if it launches correctly, could literally have a billion users overnight, which would, be 10x all of blockchain of all projects together in one day. So I would see those as our 3 competitors. Libra for money, Ethereum for smart contracts, and Ethereum or Hyperledger for private ledgers. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting, Jeff. And look, Libra and Ethereum, while being, potentially formidable competitors, you would have to say that they also face some really, really significant challenges to get where they need to be. Libra, obviously, from really the regulatory point of view, and they updated their roadmap and their white paper earlier this month, I think, in an attempt to try and appease the regulators, and perhaps they had to move away from that original vision of a decentralized blockchain to try and appease the regulators. ETH, of course, they're trying to launch ETH 2.0, the Serenity blockchain, and there's a lot of hype and speculation as to how and when they will achieve that. But I suppose, with you guys as well. So, you've been, the Catapult roadmap has been in place for, at least a year or 2 now. And I believe you've now, the NEM, you guys have published a roadmap pointing to the end of this year. I think November is when you expect that to go live. And I think you've gone on record, or the core devs at NEM have gone on record as to, they think that's a date they can commit to. Is this the case?
Yeah, and I would say that, well, first of all, if I could go back to when we talk about Libra and Ethereum 2.0 launching, there's a lot of people in this industry that talk a good game about blockchain, about how they're solving problems and they've fixed this and they fixed that and they're going to launch. And it turns out that it's very easy to talk blockchain and very hard to actually do, to get to that 100%, because you can't launch a blockchain that only works 98% of the time or 99% of the time. And so when I look at Ethereum and I look at all the talented devs and the multitude of devs that are working on Ethereum and how they kind of struggle and constantly get delayed making Ethereum 2.0, it's just surprising to me that there's so many new people that think I'm going to make a better Ethereum when Ethereum has a hard time making a better Ethereum. And I can look at EOS, for instance. They did billions of dollars in their ICO. They had developers that had made multiple blockchains before and still, took a long time to develop and then launch. And it's a good blockchain, but there's people that are claiming that they're going to make something that's 10 times better than Ethereum 2.0 or 10 times better than EOS. And then, so for just as a technical challenge, it's extremely difficult to make a very good blockchain. And, anybody who's ever launched one, I think, can probably tell you the same. But from a regulatory standpoint, like Facebook, all the issues that they're going to go through trying to become a regulated blockchain is just as big, if not more, of a process and an ordeal to go through. And so when we're looking at Symbol, when we're trying to be both an enterprise blockchain and a public blockchain, because Symbol is the first ever blockchain that's designed from scratch to be both private and public in nature. And that's really special. And so we're having to look at some of these same things that these other organizations are looking at, and it just takes a long time. And before, the process of making a roadmap was, we think it's going to kind of be this. I mean, I don't want to use this expression, too literally or too figuratively, but it's kind of, before it was, it's ready when it's going to be ready. And you don't know that it's going to be ready until it's ready. So you just kind of stick your, lick your finger, stick it in the air, feel which way the wind is blowing, and make your best educated guess. But that's difficult because there's just so many things that are involved with it. So, what I'm happy to say now is that we're getting close enough that a new roadmap has been made, and it's detailed. It's tracking over 300 different points of what needs to be done to get Symbol launched. And it literally has like these 300 things laid out on a week by week basis. This is this week, this is what has to be done. This is next week, that's what has to be done. So we have a pretty good idea. We're past the stage of kind of hoping and guessing and waving our finger in the air, and really planning it down on a week by week basis. So yeah, I feel fairly confident. I'm not going to make any promises that it's going to launch when it's going to launch, but I do feel fairly confident that it will launch by the end of this year.
All right, well, that process will be fascinating to watch, Jeff. And look, I completely agree. Anytime a tech team or a blockchain team, anyone building anything in technology, to try and put deadlines and timelines in places, it's ridiculously challenging. And I think I think people do understand that, but you do have to have a goal to work towards. So all the best in achieving that goal. And a link will be in the show notes to that roadmap, because it is a really credible and detailed roadmap, I think. So yeah, if anyone wants to check in on the process, a link in the show notes. switching gears just slightly, Jeff. So, and I guess this does relate to the NEM core dev team. Someone called Jaguar, I think, who is probably the
Jaguar.
Yeah. Jaguar is the NEM core dev, and I've seen his name thrown around the NEM community for years now. But I saw that he posted an update, 20 days or so ago, and this was more about the governance changes at NEM, and I guess this speaks to the NEM community as well, because and again, this is something else that I've always found interesting about NEM is you guys have always had one of the bigger communities, and I guess you'd say corporate, I don't know if corporate structure is the right word, but you'd have all these different governing bodies and this really big ecosystem of websites and forums and blogs and communities, and it always seemed like there was a lot going on. But I guess the flip side of that is maybe there are challenges as to who is doing what, and from what I gather, this recent announcement is an attempt to begin to streamline some of that. What's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened when we were forming the foundation in late 2016 and then starting it in 2017. The idea was to build up communities all over the world. And so we had basically different regional chapters of the NEM Foundation in over 20 different countries. And we were regularly holding meetups, promoting events, and that worked really well at kind of building the community. We have a great Twitter presence, Facebook, and that was really nice. And also we had a lot of people that did a deep dive into the NEM tech. And NEM technology, while it wasn't always polished and shiny as far as the UI and UX went, it was accessible to almost anybody because of the way our contracts and APIs are set up. So that, for the regular user to try to launch their own coin on Ethereum or try to build a Hyperledger chain, they just couldn't do that, right? But on NEM, if you want to make your own coin, you can do that. It's super easy. Like literally anybody can do that. On Bitcoin, I remember one time I tried to make a multi-sig contract, and trying to do multi-sig on Bitcoin, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how many people do you know have made their own multi-sig contracts on Bitcoin or Ethereum? Like from just by themselves doing it. Do you know anybody that's been able to code that?
No, I'd have to ask around the dev teams at the Brave New Coin, but off the top of my head, not really.
Yeah, well, so in NEM, literally, I know dozens of people who have made their own coins and made their own multi-sig contracts. Like literally anybody can do it. And so, that's kind of a fascinating thing about NEM. But the foundation, basically, to get back to the main topic, the foundation spurred these communities, and they were able to use the technology and verify themselves independently that it was real, instead of asking a developer or hoping that some great technologist person can do it. They can do it themselves. And so that's the exciting thing about NEM, is people could actually do it for the first time ever instead of talking about it. And so that really helped us. But as it turns out, building communities around the world wasn't necessarily the best approach towards gaining adoption. We definitely got some fans and we had a lot of people talking about us, but we didn't actually get a lot of projects launched. And so when I think about what makes a blockchain successful, we can think about some things like Ethereum had this great company called Consensus. And I don't care what anybody says, I think a large part of the 2017 Bitcoin pump was actually people also getting into Ethereum to go and participate in ICOs sponsored by Consensus. Because Consensus had this kind of deal where they would help people write white papers, they would help fund projects, they would help give developer tools, and this company was able to really help kickstart the Ethereum ecosystem. And so, it had a great company. Ripple has Ripple Labs. Bitcoin while being completely decentralized, still has a great company called Blockstream that's helping promote it and helping to build on top of it. EOS has Block One. And so we're seeing some success in these communities, and we're thinking, how could we, do something? And so for me, when I look at what we're doing with new governance, we're setting up something called NEM Group. The NEM Group works together with the community and the core team, regularly gets feedback from them, but the NEM Group also owns 3 different companies. It's essentially, if you can kind of think of it as a blockchain conglomerate. That might not be the best way of describing it, but mentally that's kind of how I imagine it, with this kind of NEM Group at the top, and then underneath it, there's a trading desk company which manages liquidity. And then there's NEM Ventures, which is basically another company that's looking into investments and partnerships. And then finally, there's a NEM software company, which is actually building tech development and doing business development. And so when I see these 3 branches working together under the NEM Group umbrella, I see a lot of, synchronicity of how they can help each other and make NEM really be the best it can be.
Fantastic, Jeff. Well, look, looking through all those different NEM companies and councils and foundations and investment arms and so on, you guys really do have a wealth of talent and the resources to get stuff done. So, look, I hope the rest of 2020 plays out well for you and your team as you do move forward and we get this catapult loaded and ready to fire. So look, just before we go to a break and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the crypto conversation hot take round. But yeah, just closing thoughts on Catapult and Symbol and what you think the unique point of difference is that you guys have to offer.
What makes Symbol great is like I said before, that it's just going to work. It has great security. And look, NEM, the first version of NEM, solved so many problems and introduced so many new features into the blockchain industry that it never really got credit for. It was fantastic. And Symbol is introducing even more first-time features and functionalities. And so we're solving problems that literally I've heard other people say that can't be solved. We have this new version of proof of stake, which is rewarding people that not just stake their coins, but also people that run nodes, right? Which goes back to Satoshi's own vision. Spend some money, buy a computer, run your own node and mine. Now we can literally do the same thing. Spend some money, get some coins, run your own node, make blocks and earn from that. But we also have done a lot of other things. It's a great API blockchain, meaning everything works via an API call, which means every transaction either works 100% or it doesn't work at all, which leads to great security. And it also has, we brought back namespaces and mosaics from NIS1, but we're also adding in other ways to differentiate business development on the blockchain, like metadata and aliases. And then we have like these super sweet ways of conducting business logic through smart contracts using aggregate transactions, which is unlike anything I've seen on other blockchains. And this multi-layer, multi-sig, when you mix in things like cross-chain transactions, it's really fascinating. And then lastly, we have this delegated harvesting feature, which again, I've heard a lot of people talk about that can't be solved, but NEM solved that in 2015, which is where basically a lot of people, there's this problem where people are staking coins, but to stake their coins, they put their coins at risk. Whereas in NEM, we basically delegate to yourself through a second contract, through a second account that you own, and then you can use that account to produce blocks, which is a fascinating way to solve the problem. And literally after 5 years, not one coin has ever been lost. Again, it's had a perfect record. And so we're continuing on and even making that better with some improvements in Symbol. And those are going to come out on the testnet later on this week. So I'm super excited about those later on this month.
Excellent, Jeff. Well, look, all that sounds fantastic. And of course, We'll have a link to the Catapult and Symbol white paper in the show notes if listeners want to dive down the NEM 2.0, really, the NEM rabbit hole. Let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off with the Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round.
Whether you're an enterprise fund manager or a retail trader, buying and selling cryptocurrencies successfully requires price discovery you can rely on. Brave New Coin's liquid indices provide trusted US dollar prices for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. Featuring end-of-day or intraday outputs, you can count on the BLX, ELX, and XRPLX for accurate US dollar pricing for smart contract oracles, settlement price discovery, net asset valuation, and performance analysis. Visit bravenewcoin.com to find out more.
We're back, and I'm with Jeff McDonald. He's the co-founder of the NEM Foundation. Jeff, I like to finish each Crypto Conversation podcast with a quick round of rapid-fire Crypto Conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. I just want your hot takes, your hot fire. Take your best shot. Here we go. Where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I'm definitely not a maximalist. I believe in lots of different blockchains, and I'm super excited to see blockchain be used not just for money, but also voting, certificates, identity, and a lot of other features and functions.
Fantastic. Okay, well, Jeff, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
I really believe, like I said, that blockchain is going to be used for more than just money. There's a lot of people that say that blockchain is the internet of money, but I think blockchain is the internet of trustlessness, meaning anything that needs to be trusted and verified can someday be utilized through the blockchain.
Fantastic. Okay, Jeff, I ask every guest this question, a little bit of a curly one, put you on the spot. Who wins who wins the American presidential election 2020?
Oh, why did you have to ask me that? You know, it's really up in there. I'm going to say Joe Biden, because I think what's going to happen is when Trump got elected the first time, he didn't have any record, and I think during the presidential debates, and when it comes down to do a side-by-side comparison, there'll be so many false tweets and misstatements that they'll be able to use against Trump. But who knows? I mean, the guy is, he just can't stay down. He gets up off of everything. So it's very possible that we could see another 4 years of Trump.
Yeah, Trump is the original Teflon Don.
Yes, he is. It's amazing.
Anyway, we'll keep it moving. UBI as a potential fix for AI-induced automation. You remember Andrew Yang used to talk about this, but of course now the UBI conversation has kind of switched to at least a temporary and the short to medium term fix for the current economic crisis. UBI, what's your hot take?
I'm a fan of UBI. I think that we should experiment with it more, and that the few experiments that have already started have shown promising. But we don't know, like, if you have isolated UBI in one community and it's doing better than the community next to it, that's one thing, but it's a different thing to put UBI across a whole nation. Will all those communities see that effect, or will it all kind of equalize out and become the new normal? That's the real question.
Yes, indeed. Very nicely said. Well, Jeff, Bill Gates famously said, we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. What does the blockchain space look like in 10 years' time?
Bitcoin will still be around, but Symbol will have a higher market cap. No, look, I'm a little bit serious. I'm a big believer in Bitcoin, but we've already seen Tether get more liquidity. We've already seen other blockchains have more transactions per second. And I think it's a matter of time before some other blockchains have higher market caps too. But overall, I'm super excited to see blockchain become normalized and be in the back end of many apps that we use on our phones.
Awesome, I love it. All right, well, William Gibson said the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example, Jeff, of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
So I have a company called, I'm the co-founder of a company called LuxTag, and we do certificates of authenticity for items, watches, clothes, whatever. And I have quite a few of these certificates on my phone. And once I've got used to purchasing a product and having a digital certificate on my phone secured by the blockchain, it's something that I don't want to live without. I think it's an idea whose time will come and it'll get a lot of adoption. And I think that whenever I think about and I buy something, but I don't get my certificate now, I'm like, where's my certificate? Who wants to trust something that doesn't come with a certificate? So I think these blockchain certificates of authentication are definitely something that's here now, but most people don't realize.
Very nicely said. All right, let's zoom out, Jeff. What is the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
If we survive, then definitely utopia. There's COVID. We got really lucky because it kind of deadly, or it spreads. It's highly contagious, but not so deadly. The real problem could have been if we had something that was highly contagious and highly deadly. So, there's some kinds of the flu, which are the exact opposite. They're not contagious, but they're highly deadly. So there's some kinds of the flu that have more than a 50% mortality rate, but don't get spread from person to person. They're very rare. So I think about different things like that, asteroid impacts. But if we can, survive the next few hundred years and get AI and space travel, then definitely the utopia is coming, right? It's just the world on average gets better and better for people, and I expect to see that trend continue.
Excellent, Jeff. I completely agree with that. Optimism is the way to go. Glass half full. Bring on the utopia. Let's just hope that COVID-97 or 98 doesn't get us along the way. But let's finish this off, Jeff. Final question. What is your favorite science fiction book, film, show, or universe?
My favorite movie is definitely a movie called Cloud Atlas, which deals with, it's a great movie by the Wachowski sisters, who kind of made the movie The Matrix a long time ago that was mind-bending, but Cloud Atlas is 10 times as mind-bending because it deals with multiple lives over multiple times and how they affect each other. It's just truly a great movie.
Yeah, I can completely agree. And look, you got to love the Wachowskis, and they've made some fantastic films. Look, The Matrix, that's one of my absolute favorite films. But you're right, Cloud Atlas is that's really high concept sci-fi. I would describe it as, and there's nothing wrong with that. Hey, been fantastic talking to you today, Jeff. Thank you very much for your time. The microphone is yours. Please take us out. Tell the listeners where they can find you on your various platforms. And look, all the stuff will be in the show notes, but where they should go to find out more about NEM, Symbol, and Catapult.
Definitely. You can visit our website at nem.io or our Twitter at nemofficial.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Boom, there you go. Thank you to Jeff McDonald of NEM. Link in the show notes to the updated Symbol white paper, codename Catapult, due for release late this year. This episode of the Crypto Conversation was brought to you by BNC Pro, the new digital wealth platform featuring an all-in-one suite of customizable institutional-grade applications that help you manage your crypto investments. You can research, chart, screen, analyze, optimize, report, and more. BNC Pro is the ultimate portfolio tool for individual or enterprise use. So streamline your workflow, manage your crypto, and master this brave new asset class with BNC Pro. Of course, you can just go to bnc-pro.com to create your free account, or look in the show notes to this episode, and of course there'll be a link there as well. If you did enjoy the show, please do subscribe to the Crypto Conversation and give us a 5-star rating in whatever podcast app you are using. But for now, that was today's episode. See you back real soon. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave and New Coin.